Welcome back, everybody. Now for the part of the conference that I know a lot of you have been looking forward to. It's winning prizes. So we're going to start to play a game now. It's a game of general knowledge and also listening skills to see how much we've retained. I'm speaking to everyone here in Dubai, the Philippines and India. So we're planning to have at least 2,000 players playing this game this afternoon. So please, first step, get your phones out. Probably the first time in any meeting that someone's going to tell you to do that. Get your phones out and let's start playing. Crew, if you can hear me, get your phones out and hold it up. Where are your telephones? Chennai, I can see you, but your phones aren't out. Can they hear us, IT? We need the crew logging in. But meanwhile, the audience here in Dubai, ladies and gentlemen, please get your phones out and log into kahoot.it. That's the Kahoot sound. Let's start logging in, please. Crew in India and Philippines, please log in, get your phones out, kahoot.it. IT people, let's get the screen up so we can see how many people have logged in, please. Kahoot.it. Can we see the screen up now, please? The game screen. There we go. So we've got 35 players so far. 35 out of 2,000. That's not many. Where is everybody? Let's keep logging in. 44, that's better, but still far away from 2,000. 51, that's better. 53, 56. Let's keep logging in. We'll wait for you, our crew from India and Philippines. Log into kahoot.it. If you win this quiz to our crews overseas, they guarantee a prize. I'm not sure what that is, but there will be a prize. 70 players now. So we'll give you a couple more minutes for our crew to join in. Oh, 68. We were on 70. Don't drop out. The game's not that difficult. Keep logged in. 72, that's better. Okay, are we all in? Shailesh, do you think we should start the game now? Or shall we keep waiting? Are we all in? 2 more minutes? Okay, 2 more minutes. I'm being given the signal. So just as we wait for another minute or so, this game is a multiple choice game. You will need full access to your mobile phone in order to choose the correct answer. So if your phone locks out, it is time driven as well, so it's first answers. We ready, Captain Abhishek? We're ready, okay. And let the games begin. IT. First question, what age group is more susceptible to depression out at sea? Is it red, 18 to 30, blue, 30 to 50, yellow, 50 to 60, or green, no data available? 6 seconds to submit your answer. Well done, everybody. The correct answer is 18 to 30. 58 people got that correct. Kenneth is leading the way. Kenneth, question 1. Question 2. What does happened to mistrust between ship and shore staff? What happens to mistrust between ship and shore staff? Has it increased? Has it decreased? Has it remained the same? Or you simply don't know? Mistrust between ship and shore staff. What do you think? It has increased. Okay, Captain Govinda Singh. Thank you, he won that one. Now, third question. How has social life on board changed? Has it become better? Has it become worse? Are there no changes or you do not know? Wow, apparently it's become worse. Okay, so we will talk about that at next year's conference, and hopefully that changes. Chris, you've won that one. Question 4. Since 2014, how many seafarers shown signs of depression? Is it 1 in 30, 1 in 50, 1 in 100, or 1 in 10? One in 50. Captain Govinda, yes. Okay, 5 out of 10 question. When someone is lost at sea, is it automatically considered a suicide? Is that a yes, a no, not sure, or sometimes? That is a no. Chitla, well done. You're leading the way. Okay, question 6. Since 2014, what is the rate of increase of suicide? Has it remained the same? Has it doubled? Has it tripled? Or we do not have stats present? We hope that everybody gets this correct. Well, most did. Yes, it has tripled. And that's part of the reason why we're here today, to address some of these issues. Next question, please. According to UK P&I Club, what was the highest cause of death on ships in 2017? Is it tank entries, slip, trip and fall, mooring, or suicide? Yes, and this was covered in a topic earlier today for wellness, yeah. Dipti, Dr. Dipti is winning. Okay, next question. 8 out of 10. What is the most dangerous task carried out on board? Is it mooring operation, enclosed space entry, cargo operation, or navigation? The most dangerous task. Well, it is not navigation, so whoever that one was, it is in fact mooring operation as the most dangerous. Dipti, again. Okay, so next question. What is new terminology in MEG 4? Is it line design brake force, ship design MBL, working load limit, all of the above? It is all of the above. Well done. And now last question. Is that you? Is that someone else? It's you. Okay, last question. Can tank entries be reduced? No, yes, maybe, not sure. Yes, it can be reduced. Now, to announce the winners, first one is Dipti. Come on up. Come on up. Second prize goes to Govinda Singh. Please come on up. Come on up, winners. Did you win? You should come up. Get a round of applause. And third one is Chitla. Is Chitla here or overseas? There they are. So photos with the winners, the smart ones in the room. Congratulations. Well done to everybody who joined in. Okay, so now we will announce the final session for today, a very important session that will be headed up by the one and only Chief Executive Officer of Tristar Shipping, Chris Peters. So, we would like to introduce the panellists as well, considering it's our final session for today. First one, please, up on stage, Mr. Anders Østergaard. Please come up. He is the CEO of Monjasa Group, whose core business is in the trading and supply of marine fuels. Next panellist is Pradeep Luthria. Pradeep Luthria, who is an expert at marine security. Round of applause for Pradeep Luthria. Welcome. And welcoming up on stage as a panelist, please, round of applause for Rania Tadros. She is a managing partner of Ince and Company, a global maritime law firm. Hello, Rania. Welcome. And next panelist is Sharad Kumar. Round of applause, Sharad, please. Sharad is a group director of Unique Group and is an expert in artificial intelligence. Welcome. And finally, welcome up on stage, please, Sasi Manikkoth. Sasi is a chief engineer at Tristar Shipping with over 30 years sailing experience. It will be an amazing panel. Welcome, panelists.
So, good afternoon, everyone. This is the final session of the afternoon before we can all go for a cocktail reception. So we have a panel here which is coming on to current topics, some of which may or may not impact safety in the industry, but it's of fundamental importance to the industry coming forward. So I think artificial intelligence and cybersecurity are two items that are fairly new to the industry, within reason. So I would probably start with those two topics. So if I could ask Sharad to come forward first with comments on I know you have a few slides, but I think we don't have time for them, unfortunately. So if we could just have a general introduction to the topic, and then maybe we can get the live questions coming in. We can go through the panelists, and then we can get some feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for that. If you think artificial intelligence, I know it's a new term. You believe that it's a new term. We call it as the AI. But in fact, it has been around for a long time. When you get a high bilge alarm, there is some intelligence built into it. We call it as a reactive intelligence. Why is that? We are given a set of parameters saying that, all right, if this sensor goes up, you should give an alarm. So that's what exactly the machine is doing. So there is some intelligence built into that. But if you want to take it into the next level for that, then we bring in some memory into that system. I'm just rushing it through it. We bring in some memory into that system, say that, okay, so last time I had this bilge alarm, and then my engineer came down and he did this, and then the alarm has gone. So that kind of intelligence comes into the system, then next time it knows, okay, if all these parameters remain the same, and this alarm comes, then I have to do this. So that comes to the next level. So this kind of a deep learning brings in artificial intelligence to any system. This is part of the machine learning which we try to teach or let the machine learn and then react to a particular situation. One of the applications which has been quite prominent now, definitely the autonomous vessels are there, but since we are talking more about safety at sea, how can we avoid a collision using this AI? So that's one of the points which is being debated all around. Almost a lot of accidents which is happening, we blame it as human error. I think almost 75% of the accidents, we blame it right on the human error. But when we do the data analysis of that, we find out that these can be avoided. Either it can be a fatigue or an equipment failure. So how these can be avoided using the AI, and that's where the technology comes in. We interface the radar, we interface the AIS, we interface optical. So this is the same technology which Google is using when they were talking about unmanned vehicles or the robotic movements. All these optical and data interfaces are brought in, and then we give them a learning curve to make sure that we can get a scenario developed within the system to avoid all these kind of scenarios. This is in a nutshell how it is going into.
Thank you. Pradeep, I'm afraid we don't have time for presentations as the time is running short, but I believe you have a few words to say.
Good evening. I'll talk about regarding fuel switchover, which is coming by Jan 2020. Since the very low sulfur is really not available or feasible in the market easily, we switch over back to distillate fuels, which is the most easiest, since not many older ships are not changed over to scrubbers and things. So the sooner we'll change over before Jan 2020, sooner with the operators concerned, we should change over to within 1 week back or 3 days before entering a port. Better to change over, get the system checked properly, because this is going to remain for a while. So entire fuel system, the pumps, things are going to leak for a prolonged run. Also to stack up the loops and spares for the these booster pumps and supply pumps and things like that, because once you change over to the system, better to overhaul all these old hardened seals and O-rings, etc., because they are tend to leak, and invariably they leak for a prolonged run. Also, fuel pumps and fuel injectors, etc., have a non-return valve leaking and run a lot of oil out, which is containing will be a problem, and you lose a lot of money through that. So sooner you have to get these injectors overhauled, fuel pumps overhauled, and all the filters, duplex filters, things, O-rings which mostly not available on board, taken care with a makeshift method. Better to ask these proper spares and be, stack up all these things so that it will, reduce your hassles later on. That's it. Otherwise, whichever depends on the vessel, whatever the operators, managers say, so we have to do it. Thanks.
Okay, I think following on, Anders, with IMO 2020 in view, you are a significant player in the logistics chain from the supply. Maybe you could explain a bit about the new regulation, not from a regulation perspective, but from a practical owner's perspective and the reality. We all know that 3.5 is in reality 2.8, and I know you have a lot of information to give on this topic.
First of all, thank you very much, Chris, and to your entire team for arranging this amazing day. It has been very inspiring, and I think we all hope that you will continue doing this year on year. So from now on, you can only keep lifting the bar, so well done. Let's give a hand to Tristar. That said, yes, IMO 2020 is right around the corner. It's not a small thing. It's actually the biggest change in shipping industry since we came from coal going on to fuel oil. So on the 1st of January, we have nothing less than 350 million tons of fuel oil that needs to change over from today maximum allowed limits of 3.5% down to 0.5%. As Chris was just saying before, the average amount of sulfur in 380 centi-stokes heavy fuel today is 2.5, 2.8%, with the maximum allowed limits of 3.5%. So you have round about 1% of error margin within the sulfur universe. Now, coming 1st of January 2020, we go down to 0.5%, and averagely, or shall we say, good purchased fuel cargo will average around 0.45, 0.46%. So your margin for error comes down to 0.04%. And we heard before the former panel speaking about tank cleaning. And we also have Ince and Co here. What the media doesn't talk about yet, which I think will unfortunately become a major issue in 2020, is sulfur claims. And we haven't been dealing much with sulfur claims previously. It hasn't really, for fuel oil at least, been a noteworthy issue. But it will become an issue now. So I think from an owner's perspective at Monjasa, we own about 10 ships ourselves. So we are bunker suppliers at one hand, but we also ship owners on another hand. And cleaning has already started going on. We see debunkering operations going on just these days. Ship owners discharging their high sulfur fuel oil and want to bunker low sulfur fuels. You need to clean your bunker tanks. We have two issues to deal with, which I'm sure you will elaborate a bit further on, but the carriage ban. Ship owners are not allowed to carry more than maximum 0.5% fuel on board their ships coming 1st of January, and then you have the emission max allowances as well. So a major change. There are also good news, which is that the first worries were, is there low sulfur fuel availability? And to that, the short and sweet and simple answer is yes, there's plenty of avails. We've started loading our first very low sulfur fuel oil cargoes as we speak. We've supplied the first few ships around a couple of locations, and I think mid this month, end of this month, I think we will start seeing a lot of volume coming on to the VLSFO. So plenty of availability. But I think the eye has to be on details coming 1st of January. One needs to manage their procurement controls and make sure to vet your suppliers, put high demands for them, and take an interest in what kind of fuel you're actually buying. You have two main grades of very low sulfur fuel oil, namely aromatic very low sulfur fuel oil, and you have paraffinic low sulfur fuel oil. And they're easy to differ between because the paraffinic low sulfur fuel oil will typically have a high pour point, call it 28, maybe 30 degrees Celsius for pour point. So if you load that in West Africa, for example, and you're steaming to Far East Russia or up to North Europe, you would have paraffinic problems in clogging your filters, etc. So new parameters are coming into to play. But I think sulfur is the one to keep under control. And from a supply chain perspective here, and on a final note from my side, we have deeply looked into segregations on board of our vessels. So we have a number of our bunker tankers which are IMO2 chemical tankers with plenty of segregations. So here it's rather easy to deal with. But we look at evidently the tanks, we look at the lines, and we also look at the hoses. So we have marked equipment for whether the equipment is dealing with low sulfur or high sulfur. And then for the less sophisticated ships like our product tankers, well, here we simply have low sulfur fuel oil tankers supplying just that, and then the traditional high sulfur fuel oil vessels. And both types or all types of ships will evidently also supply gas oil. So, yeah.
No, thank you for that. So leading on from that, I've heard from Anders before that the supply chain coming from, for example, Europe down to Rotterdam down to West Africa, you have a grade of fuel that may be now 4.46, and therefore if you take a vessel from Rotterdam and you have a bill of lading, you've got everything that's correct, and then you transfer it down to West Africa, and then you transfer from one ship to another ship, the variation of margin for the amount of sulfur in that fuel before it gets on board a vessel, that now changes. What is the legal angle on this? Because if the documentation's in order but the end product seems out, what are the ramifications for the ship owner?
So I think this goes to, thank you, Chris. I think this goes to considering what the end user has ordered and who they've ordered it from. And I think we are going to, as Anders was saying, going to see two different types of claims. One will be a sulfur content type claim, or two new different types of claims. One will be the sulfur content claim because you no longer have that error of margin between 2.8 and 3.5. And ultimately, whilst you do under ISO 8217 have to ensure you know where your fuel comes from, and therefore there could be arguments if you've got a sulfur breach at 0.51 or 0.52, whether that is a breach that you therefore get a FONAR for, so you could apply for a FONAR on that basis if you are able to show that you've, it started off as a 0.46 fuel, but then you have the different types of claims, which is the 0.5% sulfur claim I am now seeing live as we talk, which is a fuel stability issue, which is a separation of fuel issue. Whether that has come about due to whatever was in the tank when this new fuel oil was added, in the hope that they would start to clean their tanks without having to debunker, or whether this is an issue between the integration of both fuels, I'm not chemically qualified to say. But what I can say is the certainty is that there will be these new types of claims. But my personal view is that the industry is likely to take a pragmatic approach in the first few months whilst owners and charterers and bunker suppliers and traders sort out the interplay between them. And that one of the reasons the carriage ban is coming into March is really, I think, giving us a little bit of a bedding-in period. I think that the likelihood of obtaining FONARs after March is going to be much harder. But I think FONARs, if the fuel content, sulfur content is 0.51, for example, and you're able to show it started its life and has been slightly contaminated on the way, logic says that you should be able to get an exemption. It's not fit for purpose for the engine. The issue is that it's in breach of the regulation, and that's how you might be able to get an exemption. The really tricky claims, I think, are going to be the ones where the fuel, due to separation or things I definitely don't understand, is no longer fit for purpose and can cause damage. And then if you're carrying, you talked about a tank separation, there are vessels, again, I'm told, that will have issues in terms of how many tanks they're going to be able to utilize.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I agree. One comment about FONAR is that the fuel non-availability report, you even have to apply for the FONAR before the event or the breach is happening. I'm very happy to see that that the Phonar questionnaire is very, very long and very detailed in order to make sure that Phonar is not an out-of-jail card. So it's not to jump over where the fence is low. So I hope that we won't get much into Phonar after 1st of January. Now, secondly, there are 4 samples drawn on each bunker supply, whereas one of them is the Marpole sample. And those 4 samples is where the attention is going to be around. Bunker suppliers may supply 0.50, let's call it that, but when you test the bunker sample itself, it may be then 0.51 or 0.52 or even 0.48. But what's interesting is I think that ship owners, operators, and bunker suppliers needs to move closer in the bus. So when we start seeing these sulfur disputes, because we will start seeing them, please, from a bunker supplier's perspective, speaking to ship owners, invite surveyors into your bunker tanks if they're safe to enter. And then test from the bunker tanks on the receiving vessel, because that's actually the most representative sample that you get if your representative bunker samples may or may not be representative. So there is another step which I think that a ship owner and a bunker supplier having good faith towards each other should analyze all steps in the process. Yeah.
So if you've loaded and then you send a sample and your sample comes back off spec, what is then your duty legally, Rania?
Sorry, if
you have a bill of lading that says your bunkers are on spec, you do your normal sample testing as you would do, but then you get a report back.
If the bunkers supplied are off spec, and let's say they really are off spec, there's no argument as to whether they are technically on spec but not fit for purpose, then the supplier hasn't supplied the fuel that's required to be supplied. And whilst most bunker suppliers' terms and conditions will have limitations of liability, etc., you will normally be able to debunker that fuel.
Yeah, but what happens if you've left port and you're 1 week, 2 weeks out to sea and you need to use those bunkers?
Well, if it depends on how they're off spec at that point. If they're off spec because there's a stability issue, they're going to clog up your engines, then you're not going to utilize them. You're going to have to wait. If they're off spec because they're not sulfur compliant, that's where I think there should be a mechanism to start to consider how those fuels can be burned. I'm not here to give people ways to avoid the regulation, but we've also got to think about how it's going to be implemented and how it's going to be tested. But fundamentally, legally speaking, you haven't got what you bought, which is on-spec bunkers, and therefore you can give them back. But there are all the practical aspects to that. I get that.
Okay, so this is an evolving issue because we don't really know how various jurisdictions are going to deal with this.
That's right. I mean, Port State Control is supposed to deal with it in terms of ensuring the regulation is adhered to, and clearly the carriage ban is going to help them do that unless they're going to have sniffers all over the place. So that is going to be an aspect. And if you are seeking to enter a port with off-spec fuel because it's got a very high sulfur content, then query whether you're going to have to enter with a debunkering pre-authorization in place in order to evidence that you're debunkering.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Sanjay here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my question is like, if on the BDN, the bunker is on spec, yeah, but after testing, when you send it for testing, it turns out to be off spec, then how to deal with it?
What are you testing?
We send this sample for, say...
Your sample or the bunker supplier sample?
Our sample.
So you are on a separate testing program?
Yeah, that's right.
On your own ship?
Yeah, yeah.
And you send that one in and that's off spec?
That's right.
Yeah. then you would have to, see, this is where it's important that you have a good relation to your bunker supplier. Because in any bunker supplier's terms and conditions, including in the BIMCO bunker terms, for example, it is the representative samples of the bunker supply are the ones stipulated on the bunker delivery note. So I think it's very wise to be on a testing program with your own ships, but that first report that you will have, and if that's off spec, that evidently indicates that you need to go for formal testing on one of the representative samples. And it's an interesting question because I'm not sure if we have any port state inspectors with us today, but I know we have ABS here, I know we have Lloyd's here. But if I'm not mistaken, any port state inspector will, all being even, not look at your own FOBAS sample, to take an example. They would look at the representative samples mentioned on your bunker delivery note, and or the port state inspector would draw a sample from your ship's bunker tank, and then either of these will be, in eyes of the port state inspector, the representative sample in terms of sulfur content.
Okay, I'm conscious before we actually open up fully to the floor and the audience, we haven't discussed the Saiber technologies yet, so we should probably have some input that we can move forward with, and then we can open up on all the topics to the audience and to the online system.
Thank you so much, Chris. Actually, I'm quite used to it. People want to talk about cybersecurity last. And so today was a perfect example of what happens every day to me.
But at least in this conference, there's not 10 people left, because what I'm pleased to see myself is that...
I'm grateful for that. I think cybersecurity and some beverages are always a very good combination. But yeah, so what can I say about cybersecurity, seeing this timer, tick away in front of me? It's actually just that we are running against time to collectively take action, because the big bad dark side has more resources, has more funding, and has a bigger drive to do us harm than we have to save ourselves. And unfortunately, this is, it's surpassed the drug trade, it's surpassed any other kind of organized crime. And on a daily basis, you find small attacks, people losing money in man-in-the-middle attacks, people having ransomware. And somehow it's still, the message has still not sunk in through that we are navigating very dangerous waters, just to give it flavor of the domain where we are sitting. We need to collectively work harder, be more aware. The solutions are there, it's not all bad. We need more education, more awareness, and technology and AI are on our side, but we need to remember that AI is also on their side. The dark side can afford more sophisticated AI to break into our security layers than we can afford to have those layers. And with changes coming in technology like quantum computing and the like, even the security layers that we have constructed for ourselves today are going to be easily broken down, just because we are getting better at technology ourselves. So I don't know whether anybody saw the movie Terminator, the most recent one that's come out. I saw it yesterday, and it puts AI in a very bad light, actually. My nachos and my cheese went cold because of all the people dying throughout that movie. But it's really there. I mean, we're coming there, and I take this opportunity to tell each and every one of you that there really is a problem. Maybe you haven't heard of too many vessels getting hijacked or ransomed just yet. But factories and offices and individuals, it's happening every day.
So, Sharad, would you like to come back on this? I can see you're itching to. So maybe you can come back with some positives of the industry and these particular precautions that you put in place to protect.
That's kind of a good comment from him. I don't know whether he was supporting me or talking against me. But when you talk about AI or smart ships or cybersecurity, now what you're having on board the vessel is that you are getting all these reports back to your vessel, correct? And there's another way of acting on it. You can look at it, there is two ways of data transfer, whether it can be push or a pull. There is option now whether you can actually log into the vessel and pull the data. So when you're opening up a port, or when you're doing this data transfer between the vessel and the office or to your mobile, you are creating a channel between one entity and other entity. So there is an open channel, and that is where it's being opened up to whoever is trying to come in. So where there's a peer-to-peer or any kind of interface which is happening. The second one, when we are talking about autonomous vessels and remote control vessels, that's where the risk comes in. As he rightly mentioned, AI is used on both sides. It can be used for the betterment on this side, whether we are trying to develop highly efficient machines and all that, but we need to be careful saying that the same technology is also on the darker side, which can be used. You will be wondering, okay, why someone wants to use that technology and come to my ship? What am I going to get? People are looking for your data. So it's not that they are not after your money or anything. It's the data that they have been looking at. And why? Because the data is tomorrow, that's the data will be powerful. If they can track the vessel, if they can track the vessel to the point how the vessel is performing, how the vessel has been going around the world, and who all are on board, and then also what kind of machinery you have on board, this is the data that's important. The second one which people are looking at is you have the crew on board, which is watching a lot of movies, or it depends on your bandwidth, what you're looking, what the people are browsing on board those things. I think this morning there was a heated discussion on whether can we give Wi-Fi to the crew on board. That was a discussion on another front also. So one of the points which we were highlighting was that it's an opportunity for you on a training front or on a safety front, because what they were doing was that if you want to use your Wi-Fi, they have to earn that period. Saying that, okay, if you watch 1 hour or half an hour of a safety video, and then you could go through the answers to that, then you get access to, say, 3 hours. So that was the way they were using it. So there are technology on various fronts. I was just commenting in, nothing to do with AI. But what I'm saying is that be careful on that. I mean, the last year, 2018, there was a major attack on one of the leading ship owners. He ended up with 100 to 200 million of loss. And that was captured, that was cleaned up. But they are worried about what is going to happen with the data which has gone. How it's going to come back to you. So just be careful out there.
I'd just like to add, I don't believe that it's the data that's the attraction in all cases. Today, we have a very poor security situation in the world. And if you combine a hacking capability with a friendly person on board, the combination of the two can be quite a dangerous cocktail to create an explosion or a collision just to disrupt. So this is one other area where cybersecurity norms are very important. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think now we can open up to questions from the audience or from the online.
This question's for the chief engineer. You mentioned because of the low sulfur fuel and I presume due to the viscosity, you're going to be operating with a lot of leakages. Now, that obviously is unsustainable. What is the solution? What is the long-term solution to be able to operate your ships now on this new fuel?
Excuse me. No, you're talking about the sediments. What? Come again, I didn't understand the question.
I don't know if I understood you correct, but you mentioned now when ships change over to the new low sulfur fuel,
right?
They will operate with a lot of leakages you typically mentioned.
Yes.
Which I presume is due to the viscosity, the lower viscosity.
Low viscosity, right.
Right. So now that we are on the same plane, but how do you propose ships will be able to operate sustainably without obviously having all these kind of leakages? Are there some modifications that have been suggested for your vessels by the OEMs?
No, like earlier, it's been running with a high temperature, all the systems. Now the O-rings and seals and all have already hardened and it's had its life. So probably it will start leaking for a prolonged period. So slowly you'll have to get it because on an average, you normally change over for a short while and run. So the leaks have been taken care before your arrival at port, things like that. Now continuous a prolonged run, so it is tend to leak anywhere and everywhere. Except like fuel engineers, fuel pumpers, all these have been chief engineer with his expertise, he just managed for the port state control. But it's for a long run, it cannot be done. So these things you have to take care. So entire system have to go for an overhaul. If you are continuously using the distillate fuel, then with the additives in advance, you have to use the wear and tear to take care. There's a lot of factors, yeah. That's what I mean. I understood, I answered a question.
Not really. Do we have any more questions to the floor, or shall I open up?
Question to Anders. You mentioned port state control. It's independent surveyors like us who go on and get samples out. But here's a real problem presently. I can talk about Singapore and Fujairah, where we represent charterers who stamp bunkers. And currently, the manifold sample that is drawn out for testing is a huge area of contention, where it ends up being a manifold sample, not specifying whether it is a manifold sample of the bunker barge or the ship. Obviously, we are usually on board the ship. We go on the barge to just take the initial soundings and maybe take a dipstick. But on the BDN, it's premeditated and written down that it's the barge manifold samples, which are nicely packed and kept. Don't ask me from where they come. Whether they are real manifold samples or not is questionable. Not from your suppliers, by the way. I leave that out. But there are enough players out there who have those samples ready, and they present those samples to the vessel at the time of signing the BDN upon completion. One question is on the quantity, but leave that aside for now. But the ship is diligently taking, with us witnessing the ship's manifold samples, which are dripped representation of what is being supplied. But conveniently enough, that's not signed for, not acknowledged, or accepted by the bunker barge master. It's the barge manifold sample, which is mentioned in the BDN with the numbers and everything before anybody has any indulgence, and it's presented to the master to sign. And usually at the time of signing off, there's a charterer there wanting the ship to cast off, or the bunker barge to cast off and get on with the cans being pressed for, and it's not debated or disputed at that time. And lo and behold, if those bunkers which are stemmed are not per specs, there's a questionable dispute which the carrier or the receiver has no chance to contest, although the samples are drawn, signed off by us independents, and is retained on board the mothership, but not acknowledged by the bunker barge master. So likes of Rania would look at that and straight away say it's not going to be held up, it's those samples, and let's test those samples, and those are very well within specs, but might not be represented. I personally see more of that happening with the low sulfur fuel coming in. So there has to be, if there is anything that one has to do who stems bunkers, has to clearly identify what representation sample will be signed off by both parties. And your point about taking tank samples is brilliant. But practically speaking, it's a nightmare. It's practically impossible to draw out samples from the bunker
tanks, where the receiving or nominated tanks where the bunker is received. So would you have a comment on the existing problem that remains, which is only going to be amplified in my view? Would you have a comment on that, sir?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's an old problem. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I've heard about this issue many, many, many times. Now, I think, honestly speaking, that the best place to take bunker samples is on the bunker tanker, for starters. Now, many bunker operations, they take place via ship to ship. And we have high freeboards, and on many occasions, the receiving vessel's crew are never meeting face to face with the bunker tanker crew. So they use ropes to exchange papers, sample bottles, etc. So we have to, from my perspective, take the samples from the bunker tanker. And a properly equipped bunker tanker has a drip sampling equipment installed on the manifold and a 5-liter cubitainer underneath. But throughout the day-to-day, we've been speaking about crew negligence. And crew negligence is where mistakes happen, not in AI, with human beings being involved, and mistakes do happen. So we have, on occasions in our company as well, we've been doing blended fuel products, or changing from high sulfur over to low sulfur, whether it be from fuel oil to gas oil, and the sample has not been representative. There's a first gush, or it doesn't drip throughout the entire process. So yeah, mistakes happen all the time. But if we stay to the legal framework of this, the bunker, the general terms of and conditions of the bunker supplier clearly states that the representative samples are taken from the bunker tanker's manifold. A lot of companies, such as yourself, are then representing charterers when they receive their bunkers, and you want the bunker supplier to confirm that yes, it took place. And they could at least put a signature. But why? I mean, it doesn't change the legal status whether you will get your turn. Yeah. The lawyer wants to talk. But I will say it doesn't change the legal status. It's the bunker sample on the bunker tanker that's representative. Now, 10 minutes ago I said, let's go into the receiving ship's bunker tank and see what's in there. So it all comes back to trust. When we spoke about the psychological part of the crew farers, somebody mentioned it's egos. It's egos, yeah? Egos is playing too much of a part in this world. So drop the egos and drop the fighting, and let's talk about what could have happened here. So if it was us having a sample, and please challenge me on that, we test the representative samples. If they're off, or if your sample on the receiving vessel is off, let's dive into the bunker tanks. But was the oil in your bunker tanks representative, would be our question. So we would want a copy of the oil record book to then see where's the last place that you bunkered, and were those samples on spec. So,
I mean, I've got nothing to add from the legal perspective, because like you said, that one's quite reasonably straightforward. Is the representative sample on or off? But I think from a practical, I was going to just repeat what you said 10 minutes ago, which is not delve into the fuel tank on board, because I'm not sure that you can verify what has happened to the fuel once the bunker supplier has handed it over to the ship. But what I did want to say is the aspect of trust. I mean, like I said, I have a claim at the moment, and the only reason it is not going through the courts right now is because there is a huge amount of trust and respect. And as the lawyer watching the players in the market negotiate and talk, it's been very interesting. I've learned a lot about how important it is for the parties to liaise and to trust each other. There is a problem. There is a problem. Ultimately, nobody in the chain wants to burn fuel that's going to damage the ship, fundamentally. The problem is, with the increasing use of non-representative samples, my hope actually is that this new regulation will decrease the chances of that, because, and I'm not just doing an advert, but because I think that players in the market will see more value in going to suppliers who can verify their sources, who can not play games, to put it simply. So my hope actually is that the new regulation will not only be better for the environment, will cause some issues for the industry, will give me a little bit of work, but actually will also clear up the market a little bit.
An honest lawyer.
We are over time now by 9 minutes, 32 seconds, Chris.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we have another question.
I have got some questions which I intertwine to everybody. First thing you told me is with this new IMO 2020, you are going to have two different types of claims, one for sulfur and another for non-sulfur. Let us leave the sulfur for the time being, because I don't think that is of a serious consequence, because the first thing is the charterers are providing the fuel, and in case the BDN shows something and the testing lab shows something, you still have a reproducibility. You can go to the next lab with a common this thing. And so I think the reproducibility kicks in there, 0.525 or 0.53 whatsoever. So I think that's not a serious concern there. The question which I think is going to happen is the charter party has got something which is ISO 2005, 8217 or 2010, and which I think most of the owners are not renegotiated or they put as an additional clause. So now what is the new testing standards going to be is the first question. Second thing, how this gentleman told about the leaking fuel and other things, but I'm not very sure about it because we still do not know what is the viscosity. Even with 0.5% sulfur, we can have 380 degree CST, this thing. So we do not know. And the refineries in Singapore are different. The refineries which are coming from Rotterdam on the EU area are something different. So now, looking at that point, how do the refineries achieve the reduction in sulfur? Which I understand from various studies is that means they are going to introduce a lot of chemicals and which can potentially result in high cat fines, which is aluminum and silicon. My worry is about that. So how many piston rings are we going to break? Or how many liners are we going to have worn up in the first 3 months? So until we renegotiate the charter party clause under which it is going to be clarified, I think we are going to have serious problems.
Very good question again. And I think, I welcome 2020 and all that's happening in the world right now in the sense that whether we like it or not, we need to work closer together. And we, in this example, are the ship owners and the bunker suppliers. It's like cats and dogs today. The bunker suppliers are the ones who are cheating and refusing to sign the samples, and it's not regulated enough. And the ship owners, on the other hand, they are the ones who always want $1 better. Yeah, it can never be cheap enough. And with quality comes price, but there is not the market is not regulated enough. It's not, but it's coming, and we welcome it. Yeah. And the ship owners have no parameters to negotiate on but price and a clean BDN, yeah? But it's too old style. So I think AI and IT will start, and I already see it starting to play a much larger role in the maritime sector as well. Container shipping today has a lot of blockchain coming up. And we see signs of it coming in bunkers as well, and we are playing our part too, developing Project X, which is another, but we need a transparent pipeline. So to answer your question, ship owners need to ask for the COQ, the Certificate of Quality, before you bunker. You can check the viscosity, you can check evidently your sulfur, you can check your metals, and hold your supplier up to it. But what you shouldn't expect, at least, ship owners will probably try, but shouldn't expect to beat the entire market by prices and at the same time select the best available quality. Because you are right, low sulfur fuel oil comes in 300 centistokes. It comes with low metals. And it actually comes from decent suppliers that if they do a mistake, they will clean up after themselves. So I think it's looking at the bigger picture, and we welcome more transparency, and it's coming. But it all starts with trust and good relations. It's not shipping, it's relationshipping.
Last week with a ship owner, where a very big charterer they refused to renegotiate the clause, bunker testing clause. And they told this was signed in 2005, and so we stick by it no matter what it is. We signed for a 15-year agreement with you, and we are not going to change. So then they asked me what to do. I told, what to do? We do not know what to do now. We have it now. Either we negotiate or what to do. But this is the reason I asked you this question. Because there are cases which are coming like this.
Okay, I think we had some questions from the back. People were waiting to ask. Right.
Me?
Yeah. Or in front. Or from the... Go on, John. You go ahead first, and then we'll pass the microphone back.
Okay. Just one comment, really, on the defence issue. If a ship owner has a proper ship implementation plan on the transfer from the higher sulphur to the low sulphur, and that addresses your point, Anders, about cleaning out the tanks. So you don't actually have to go in, because the ship's crew should have done that and documented it all in the ship implementation plan. And if you can show the Port State Control that and your bunker delivery note, and okay, the sample at Port State Control may be slightly off, but if you can show that you've done all this in good faith, then hopefully they're not going to be too nasty about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to know about the specs for the low sulfur like fuel oil on ISO 8217. Are we going to be following 2005, 2010 or 17, or only 2017 because it is low sulfur fuel oil?
Good question again. I think most of the specifications for the ships are decided ultimately by the owner's technical management. And when ships go out on charter, there's a bunker clause, as we just spoke about, and that bunker clause will decide what the ship burns. We, as a bunker supplier, and I think I speak for the bunker industry now, will quote for whatever specs is required. I don't see much of 2017. It's rarely in the market yet. It's too new. It's 2010. It's 2012. Very few suppliers go with 2005 specs now. So I would say it's 10 and 12, which is widely used at the moment. We're still waiting for the VLSFO ISO 8217 specification to kind of become public and get used. Now it's trading off RMG 380, so high sulfur. We sell at today RMG 380 2010 or 2012 with a maximum sulfur content of 0.5. But I think during 2020 we will see an 8217 standard settle in as well. Like we wait for the prices to settle in also. That's not happened either.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time here, so in keeping with Pradeep, we'll look to the screen for the last question, and maybe I'll ask Sharad to go first and then let Pradeep finish off in keeping with the panel's start.
It's glad to hear more about people are interested in AI and automated shipping. Automated shipping, if I say, okay, or autonomous vessels, the issue everybody is facing now is that the technology is going very fast. We say the calculating power of your computers doubles every 18 months, that's what they say. But the technology advances, but the regulation which is following, it takes time. So once the technology is there, people have started using it on the shore, and then it started looking at into the marine, and then it comes to regulation whether can I allow it or not. If tomorrow you make an autonomous vessel, there is no regulation right now how to use an fully autonomous vessel. If you ask the class or anybody, they are not ready yet, because whatever rules have been prepared right now until now, it's for a fully manned vessel, whether it's a manned bridge or unmanned machinery space with so many of requirements. So that's one of the issues. Okay, the question here is how AI and automated shipping can improve the maritime safety. One of the aspects which I mentioned is with the collision. Another, on the safety factor, one of the safety factors which has been highlighted is the anti-piracy measures. Every piracy attack or issues which you're facing on that particular region, they have been monitored and data has been collected on that. So what they have found is that any boat or a parachute boat which is approaching has got a specific pattern. When we are using the radar technology for that, they can make out from the pattern what is the approach speed, where are they heading for, and what kind of vessel is that. That can give us an indication, even on a sailing vessel, saying that there is a threat which is coming up. I'm not talking about collision, but it's a different kind of threat. We are not worried about the circular of the point of contact. That is one. The second kind of safety, I'll take a simple example of your engineer's safety alarm, or we used to call as a dead man alarm. There is an unmanned machinery space, and someone is going into a machinery space which is going alone. So we used to have a switch, you have to change over and all that. But the same scenario can be adapted using an AI, where they have the monitoring system using, the simple cameras are there, and it knows that at what time it has been manned, and then what it tracks it at different levels. And then if there is no inactivity on that particular person, if he is lying there unconscious, it can pick it up immediately. The same technology is used even for your cruise vessels, because there's a lot of man overboard incidents are happening. It can make out instead of radio waves, we use light waves. It's called as the LiDAR technology. They use the same technology to find out if anybody is falling overboard. It can pick it up immediately, and it can differentiate between, say, it's a cardboard box which is falling, or a human being is falling. So these are the safety. A lot of safety aspects are still there.
Okay, thank you. Pradeep, would you like to have the final say?
Sure. We are answering this question, right?
Yes.
Okay. So actually, definitely automation and AI are very, very good tools to make the operations safer. There are so many innovations that are now underway. I am part of one where a robotic arm has been designed to do reefer plug unplug, and they're trying to bring this into the market in a big way, completely robotized, both for on the vessel as well as in the terminals. Definitely, automated shipping, we're still some time away. I joked with my wife that Dubai police now have robot cops because unmanned taxis are going to be quite commonplace. So you have to really allow, I guess, the legal people and the city planners, and I mean, if you walk in Dubai, there's places where a wheelchair can't even go with somebody pushing it. We have to really re-look at the whole arrangement of the industry to see whether automated shipping and conventional shipping can work in the same manner together. So it's looking good. The future looks good. We need to model it. We need to simulate it. And only then, we'll know really where we stand if we go in any particular direction. So.
Okay, thank you all. I think with finishing on this panel, I'd like to move to my closing remarks, as we have got almost to the end of our day and end of the time. I hope you've all enjoyed the conference. More importantly, you found it useful and beneficial in raising awareness for some important safety issues that are coming into the industry. As Tristar, we value our most important asset, which is our people. As a business, we've invested hundreds of millions in many classes of assets, and in particularly in shipping vessels. Our seafarers are fundamental in maintaining these assets. We firmly believe that we have motivated crew who have the ability to raise issues and have them resolved. Then this motivated crew will perform to the best of their abilities in maintaining our vessels. This forms part of our business for purpose culture, whereby a properly run business can not only generate profitable returns for shareholders, but can do this with a firm focus on corporate social responsibility, and thus benefiting all of the stakeholders within the business. We strive to work with all of our business partners in a professional and ethical manner. And this conference, as advertised, is the inaugural annual conference, which we intend to repeat. We received significant positive feedback regarding this conference in advance from many people that are here, and also people that have been unable to attend. As Eugene Main, our Group CEO, said in his opening address this morning, as he alluded to this morning, Tristar Shipping and Tristar Group, we are prepared to commit some funds to the establishment of a programme for the well-being of seafarers. To all attendees in this room in Dubai and around the world that are following on the web, We would ask you in your forms, feedback forms, to raise potential initiatives for the benefit of seafarers that we can investigate and where we can investigate and put something forward. We are aware that there are items that are there, mission to seafarers and other helplines that are out there. These are items that, initiatives that we think could be enhanced or initiatives that we could look to enhance. We would also like you to come forward with additional ideas that we could maybe investigate in providing funding to. As said, this is going to be an annual conference, and we'd also appreciate in the coming months if people could give their feedback on additional topics for future conferences. This way we can look to put forward a valuable conference that everyone will appreciate and will give input. As I alluded to at the start of this one, I've been to many conferences over the years, and it's fairly good to see that the back of the room is still full, because when you go to many conferences these days, you end up with less than half the people who are left in the room at the end of the day. That has not been the case here today. Personally, I would like to extend thanks to the event organisers and to Alexis for being the day's MC, and to all the speakers and panellists that have made this conference a success. However, my special thanks goes to the Tristar team that made this conference possible. There are too many names to list. However, we have our IT group IT support that has been liaising with this hotel, hotels around the world and various centres to make sure that the web links have been up and running, and they have been throughout the day as we've seen our friends abroad looking in. We've also had the in-house team in the office. They have been working tirelessly over the last several months to put this conference together. They've worked with all the speakers, panellists and everybody else that have put this conference together. As you can work out, many of you received a personal invitation from myself to this conference. I can assure you I did not send those. So, as I say, I would like to thank everybody for attending. I would like to thank the panellists, the speakers, and especially the Tristar team that helped put this together. And we now welcome you all for the cocktail reception just adjacent next door. Thank you very much.